Hi everyone, I went to the Factory 5 build school and had a blast. Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel about building a kit car and other car topics. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the notification buttons below and share with others on social media. You could always click on the links below to see my journey from the beginning. So I decided to go to the Factory 5 build school, and it was the best trip I've had in a long time. Now, Factory 5 is in Massachusetts, and the build school is in some small town called Howell in Michigan. And I was like, what the hell is this doing in the middle of nowhere, states away from Factory 5? And then I looked it up and I saw it was outside of Detroit. Well, the Motor City, right? So, okay, this is starting to make sense. So I've traveled for many years to trade shows in different cities, but I would fly in and fly out and never see the city. So now I travel and I add things to my trip to take in some of the sights, and I schedule it like clockwork. So for this trip, I'm going to hop off the plane, grab a rent-a-car at 3 p.m. and drive over to the Motown Museum, which closes at 5 p.m. on my way out to Howell, which is about an hour outside of Detroit. I will stay out there for 3 full days for class, and then go back into the city early morning, take a private tour of the Roush engine plant, then go to the Henry Ford Museum, take a F-150 plant tour, and then go to the Roush Car Museum because it doesn't open till later, and then drop off the rent-a-car and hop on a flight out. And if you notice, those last 5 things are all in one day before hopping on a 5 p.m. flight. The car has to be back by 2 p.m. But I did it within minutes to spare. So thank God for Google Maps on my phone. So as I prepared to go to the build school, I tried to do some research and read up on it. And I checked out the forums and such. And I remember a few comments from people dissing it. You know, of course, these people never went. They were just saying, oh, they're just going to try to upsell you the whole time while you're there and, yada, yada, yada. Well, I could tell you straight out, the fact of the matter is they did nothing of the sorts. In fact, it was kind of the opposite in a sense. If you did not need something to accomplish a task, then they did not suggest it. No one said 4-link suspension sucks, 3-link suspensions is a joke, and you need to buy a $5,000 independent suspension only. So that was really cool. They didn't do any of that stuff. In fact, what was nice about it is they actually had all the different options there. You could see a 3-link, you could see a 4-link, you could see the different wheels that they carry. You could see, the different fenders that they carry. And so, you almost think of it like a tailor fitting your suit. They had all these options. So they'd be like, hey, everybody, let's throw the coupe on the top of the car. And hey, whoever's thinking about building that coupe, come on and take a seat and see if this works for you. See if you fit inside the coupe of the car. And so, they would show us all these things, what the coupe looks like. What does it look like without the hood and, with the open engine bay. And so for me, it was a great experience to kind of see like, hey, in real life, what does this look like? And you're doing it within days of each other, sometimes minutes within each other, jumping around. So I got to build this car with 12 other people and learn all the tricks of how to do certain things and different things to put it together. And there was times where they'd be like, the manual says this, but we found it was better to do it this way. And so I was taking notes and taking pictures and stuff. And so I'm going to show you some pictures and kind of walk you through what I did, during the class. And, by the way, I think the class was maybe $7.99 and 3 nights in a hotel, $325. And I went to the museum and the food and, my flight and stuff. So maybe the whole trip was $1,500. I personally used frequent flyer miles to pay for the whole thing. So that's not too shabby. I didn't spend $40K to figure out if I'm going to build it or not and, give up halfway through the project. I only spent $1,500 to figure it out. And I got an education along the way. All right. So we got to the college where they teach this course, and it's in this big industrial building, which is really cool. And you can see that there's multiple cars. We got the Hot Rod 33, we have the Cobra in the background, we have I think they call it the Spider or Roadster 818, And then here's a Coupe 818 that was there. So, we're just walking in, checking the place out. And they have all sorts of different schools there for like engineering and building houses and stuff. But anyways, so what would happen is they would go through every stage of the build and they would show you like, here's how you build, this area, the suspension and the A-frames. Here's a gotcha that you're going to run into when you have, a bolt issue, one part running into another. And so as they're showing you here, like they cut off a little piece here that makes it easier to install, a little customization. And then you actually get to go in there and actually put this stuff together. And it's all volunteer. Like, if you want to sit on the sidelines for that one because you don't want to touch it, then, everybody hops in and just starts doing stuff. So I kind of stayed away from this a little bit because it seemed pretty hardcore when it came to like getting everything locked in. And next thing you know, we got our frame sitting there with our whole front end on. And then, like I was telling you before in the last video, they give you the examples of all the different suspensions. So you got your 4-link, your 3-link, and then your independent suspension. So, you get to check things out. Here we're installing the power steering onto the car. And we already got the brakes and everything on. Over here, we're taking what looks to be a 4-link suspension, and we're going to add that onto the car. So, of course, this was built, but we added, I think, the brakes, we added all the shocks, we added all these arms on. And they do have a version of this with the back end open, so you can see what's inside, what type of oils you should be using, how to take the spindles out if you want to. I mean, they go into pretty good depth on what to do with these things. And then once you have that built on, they show you how to actually get your car aligned and get the cast and camber and things like that all kind of dialed in. And again, I don't know all these exact terms here, but I'm just kind of giving you the general of what's going on. So they show you how to dial stuff in. And, this is not absolute. This is just so you could get the car rolling and you're not going to ruin it on the way to get a true alignment. But they got all the tricks of the trade on how to do that. Here we're installing a gas tank and adding in the filler areas and I think the pump was built into the tank. And then, here's a great list of all the objectives of what's going on for each day. So, the first day we get all the way to the suspension, the pedal boxes. Next day we're adding brake lines, adding the engine, the wiring, all that stuff, engine test, fire it up. Then we're doing all the body, seat belts and everything. So, they're nice, full, 8 to 5 type days, and it really works out nice. So I ended up taking a bunch of pictures of just things that I thought would be really interesting. Like here's, where the firewall should be sitting, or this is exactly where they routed this wire, or how they did the layout of something. And like in this case, I personally put the braking system in over here, the master cylinders and the tubes. And then you can see they're all ran down the side of the car, how they come up, and they put in extra little loop in there so you have a little bit of variance, some give, little tricks like that. And so I just took a bunch of pictures on how to do all that. And then this is actually your seating area, and this is where the transmission mounts. There's the body of the car. This is the area so you could get to different things like the master cylinder and things like that if you need to. They already had this all drilled out so you could put your gauges in. There's the gas filler area. And this is basically how the car comes. When you get it from the factory, it's just going to be in this exact shape, color. There's a horrible picture. We'll pass that. And so once we got the car built, we've kind of slapped a seat in there and people could kind of sit and kind of get a feel for like where the car is at that moment, which is pretty cool. And as we go, they're showing us, hey, you don't need special brake line, benders and stuff. You could just use a socket in a vise. I mean, they were giving you all sorts of stuff. And then they pulled out a flare kit. Anybody, who hasn't ever flared a brake line before, here, come on over and practice. And so they give us little 5-inch pieces. And, I was like, I've never used this tool before. This is great. So I'm practicing doing my flares and stuff. This is the coupe for the top of the car. And loaded in this transmission and engine. And I actually did the bolting on this transmission here, on that part right there. Now this is a Ford Roush engine. They have a nice relationship with Roush Racing. And so that's actually how I got to go to the Roush Racing and get a private tour, was actually through the build school. They were really cool about that and took me through a whole factory tour. I didn't feel comfortable. I should have asked, but I didn't feel comfortable taking pictures while I was on that tour. And it's just one of those things where there's a time to experience life and there's a time to document it. And I just felt like this is a time that I want to take this in. And I'm sure there's proprietary stuff they don't want me taking pictures of. So I didn't feel comfortable doing that. But man, they make great stuff and the factory is really cool. So, here we are. Of course, the engine and the transmission was already built. We just slapped that in and then we had to wire everything up. But as you can see, as we go through this process, we're adding the steering wheel, we're adding the pedals. I'm taking how close is this engine to the firewall? So for me, it's 2 digits away from the firewall. You could see the close tolerances between the steering rack, power steering rack, and the belts. So they're showing us the radiator, how that radiator gets fitted in. They were saying that a lot of people don't like these this type of tubing with the aluminum tubing. People like the black rubber or some other different type of tubing better. But the routing on this stuff's pretty tight, as you can see. Then we went into wiring. Wiring we went through. So we started wiring up the engine first. And that includes the battery underneath the gas tank in the back of the car, which is right in this area. And then there's just a ton of wiring in this car. And then here you can see some of the factory 5 wheels that they offer. So it was really cool. They're not trying to upsell you on anything. It's just like, hey, this is what we offer, and which one do you think looks best since you're sitting 5 feet away from the car? Well, what do you think? So I thought that was a cool aspect of it. Here I think we're routing exhaust pipes, and I guess there's a newer style of attachments now. They don't use these type of attachments in the kits. So little things like that they let you know about, and of course I'm sure now they have a newer kit, because they take this kit at the school and they actually build it about 7 times, and then after they build it 7 times, it's kind of worn out and they get rid of it and they get a new kit. So that's kind of how the school works. Now we're laying in our floorboards and starting the engine for the first time. So that's pretty cool. That was like very momentous. Popping in the trans cover, center console. And as you can see, the weather out there is kind of crazy. And here is some nice tires and wheels that they were using on the car. So I was just kind of documenting, what they used and what the rake of the car is going to be. And here's where you mount the seat belts. And now we're going to wire in the gauges. So once the gauges were installed, I went through and actually wired all this stuff up, being an electrical engineer. I thought I could add to that aspect of the build. And then this is where we threw on the coupe of the car, and then they asked everybody who's thinking about building a coupe, why don't you hop in the car and see what it feels like, see if you can see out the window, see if you're too tall. And I met my friend Cecil here. He is from Arizona also, and he actually already had a kit car that he's putting a Coyote engine in, which is totally cool. So that was awesome. This is installing the windows inside of the car door, and how the fitment of the side panels and everything go on for the interior. And you have to get in and out of these about 3 times. You got to do this over because you have to fit stuff, then you have to cut stuff, then you got to re-put it in, then you got to wire it, and so it gets a little crazy. And then if you're not doing a coupe, you do not have to cut these holes in the door. So that other one had the hole cut, so you could actually put the window up and down. This one, you just leave it alone, and you go roadster style, and you don't have to put it in there. Just showing you the different tools that they use to cut through the aluminum. This is something that I tried to cut through. Wasn't too successful at it. The car comes with a roll bar if you want to use it, and the coupe does fit over that roll bar. If you are going to use the coupe, it comes with a different window compared to going roadster style. That's a different window, or I should say windshield. So if you're gonna, and you can actually build the car to where you switch between the two. Just take note that if you are getting the coupe, that you have to have a separate windshield to fit with it. Pretty beefy frame though, looks pretty nice. Now we've got the hood on the car, which looks really good. And they didn't put the side panels on. They weren't into the side panels that much there. But you can see the car is really coming together. Took some nice, nice cool shots here. And then they showed us what, the big fenders would look like. Those are just kind of temporarily slapped on. And then they showed us what the bike fenders are. Now, the deal with the bike fenders is this is the full fender, and then you get to cut it to wherever you want and shape it however you want. Same thing back here. And then on the back, for bike fenders on the back, it's actually the same exact fender that you use for the full fender system. And then again, you just cut it into whatever you want the look to be. So kind of cool. They're doubling up on some parts, so that's more efficient for them as a manufacturer. And then they had the regular seat, the large man seat, the race seat, so you could actually feel how all these things, sit in all these things, see how they fit, see how they feel. So here you're actually seeing all the different installations that you could put into the car, on the firewall, under the seats, things like that. And here's the car fully built, starting it up. This is at the end of day 3. And this is after he drove it. And there is the size of the manual, which is about that thick. It's pretty huge. In fact, here is the Motherload book. All 94 pages. This thing is huge. But you know what? It has all these pictures and diagrams, and I'm not saying it's, every I is dotted and every T is dotted. That's not actually true. But man, it really is a lot better than just winging it, will show you more aspects of my trips in the next videos. Till next time, please hit subscribe and notification buttons below, and have a great day.